A powerful businessman is approached by a mysterious girl in the middle of Fifth Avenue. She warns him that his life is in danger and that there's a conspiracy within his own company. Upon investigating, he uncovers secrets about his family he never imagined. But nothing prepares him for the final revelation and the betrayal by the one he trusted most. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us what city you're watching us from. We continue. I promise this will be the best story you'll ever hear. The afternoon was falling over Fifth Avenue, bathing New York City's skyscrapers in a golden light. On the 42nd floor of Albright Construction's headquarters, Roderick Albright, 53, adjusted his Italian tie in front of his office mirror. His Patek Philippe watch read 5:43 p.m. The meeting with the Chinese investors had concluded, and the numbers were promising. A luxury condominium complex on the coast of the Hamptons, valued at $2.8 billion. Anthony, prepare the car. I want to stop by Marina's office before heading home, Roderick said into the intercom. His personal assistant, Anthony Ferris, confirmed promptly, as he always had for the past 12 years. Roderick observed the city through the panoramic window. He owned an empire but felt strangely empty that afternoon. Mr. Albright, the documents are signed, and copies have already been sent to your lawyer, Carla. His executive secretary informed him as she entered the room. The Chinese seemed very pleased with the agreement. Roderick merely nodded. A descendant of Portuguese immigrants, he had inherited a penetrating gaze and steely determination from his family, but had built his empire with his own hands, expanding his father's business far beyond what anyone could imagine. 3 failed marriages later, he lived alone in a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, surrounded by luxury and solitude in equal measure. Let's go. I don't want to get caught in the expressway's rush-hour traffic, he murmured, picking up his jacket. In the exclusive elevator, he thought of his daughter Marina, a brilliant lawyer who managed the company's legal department. Despite past disagreements, she was the only person he truly trusted. In the lobby, his 4 personal security guards were already waiting. Paul Mason, the team leader, approached him. All set, sir. We'll take the alternate route due to that demonstration on Wall Street. Roderick agreed, moving towards the exit. The security team had been reinforced in recent months, following the announcement of the billion-dollar partnership with the Chinese investors. 2 new men had been hired on the board's recommendation: Richard Wong, a Brazilian of Chinese descent, and Caesar Oliver, a former military police officer. As they approached the armored Mercedes on the sidewalk, an unusual scene caught his attention. A small girl, about 7 years old, dressed in a school uniform and a colorful backpack, was intently watching the activity. Her large, serious eyes seemed out of place on her childlike face. When the group approached the vehicle, she suddenly darted forward, dodging the security guards with surprising agility. "Your car will explode when you start it," she whispered in Portuguese, pulling on his jacket sleeve. They spoke in Mandarin. I understood everything. Roderick froze. Paul immediately pulled the girl away, but the businessman gestured for him to release her. "What did you say?" he asked, crouching down to her height. The new men, she pointed discreetly at Wong and Caesar, who were talking further away. They said in Mandarin that they put something in the car that will explode when you start it. They said that after the accident no one would suspect them. Roderick felt his blood run cold. He himself understood a few expressions in Mandarin, enough to close deals but not enough to converse. His new security guards wouldn't know that. "How do you understand Mandarin?" he asked, keeping his voice calm while observing the men out of the corner of his eye. "My grandma teaches me. She's a language professor at NYU. The girl replied simply. "I live with her over there." She pointed to a simple residential building across the avenue. "We're waiting for my mum, who works at the cafe on the ground floor of your building." Paul approached, visibly uncomfortable. "Mr. Albright, we need to go. Your schedule is tight." Roderick analyzed the situation. If the girl was making it up, it would just be a delay. If she was telling the truth. He looked at Wong and Caesar, who were now staring in his direction with neutral, professional expressions. "What's your name?" he asked the girl. "B. Beatrice Maxwell." "Very well, B. Can you show me who the men are who said that?" She pointed directly at Wong and Caesar. "Them. They were smoking on the corner before you came down." Roderick felt adrenaline surge. Making a quick decision, he called Anthony with a discreet gesture. "Call Randall now. Tell him to come immediately. Code Yellow, he whispered. Randall Smith was his head of security for 15 years, temporarily sidelined by knee surgery. And call Marina. Ask her to come with her driver. As Anthony moved away to make the calls, Roderick turned to the girl. B, you're in danger for speaking to me. These men might do something to you. The little girl showed no fear. Her dark eyes remained steady. Grandma taught me that it's wrong to stay silent when someone is going to get hurt. She says silence at the wrong time is the same as a lie. The simple words hit Roderick like a physical blow. How long had it been since he had heard such crystal-clear truths? In his world of billion-dollar contracts and fake smiles, honesty had become a rare commodity. At that moment, Wong approached. "Any problems, sir? We are running late." "Just a small hitch," Roderick replied, standing up. "Change of plans. We'll wait here a few more minutes." Wong and Caesar exchanged almost imperceptible glances. Paul seemed confused but remained silent. On the 38th floor of the same building, Gustav Barnes and Edward Preston, members of Albright Construction's administrative board, observed the scene from the window. "What's happening down there?" Gustav asked, adjusting his glasses. "I don't know, but it looks like our dear president isn't following the script," Edward replied, raising his whiskey glass to his lips. "If he doesn't get into that car today, we'll have to rethink our strategy." Meanwhile, at the back of the building, an elderly woman with grey hair intently watched the commotion using a small pair of binoculars. It was Constance Maxwell, 67, a retired professor of Oriental languages and Beatrice's grandmother. With experienced hands, she typed a message on her cell phone to an old contact. The girl made contact. They reacted. "We need cover now." On the Fifth Avenue sidewalk, Roderick maintained an apparently casual conversation with B, while his brain worked frantically. In his 30 years in business, he had faced unfair competitors, corrupt politicians and traitors, but never imagined his life would be saved by a child. "My grandma says you're going to build buildings where people live in the village," B commented innocently. "She teaches free classes for the people there." Roderick frowned. Hopewell Village, a community of low-income housing near the Hamptons, was exactly where the new development would be built. Residents were being relocated to housing projects on the outskirts with minimal compensation. It was a detail he himself had delegated to the lawyers without getting personally involved. Before he could process this information, a black sedan pulled up sharply to the curb. From the vehicle emerged a corpulent man with a cane, Randall Smith, his sidelined head of security. At the same time, Anthony returned, positioning himself beside Roderick. "I'm already aware of the situation, sir," Randall said in a low voice. "Allow me to check the vehicle as standard procedure?" Roderick nodded, observing his security guard's reactions. Wong seemed tense while Caesar took a step forward. "There's no need for that, Mr. Albright," Caesar said. "We've already done the routine check. We're late for your appointment." Randall limped to the vehicle, ignoring the protest. He opened the hood with precise movements, examining the engine with an experienced eye. A few seconds later, he stepped back and shook his head negatively at Roderick. Time seemed to freeze on Fifth Avenue. Roderick felt cold sweat trickle down his back, while Wong and Caesar exchanged nervous glances. What happened next would forever change the course of many lives on that hot November afternoon in New York City. The tension was palpable as Randall approached Roderick again. His face, normally impassive, bore a grave expression. "Mr. Albright," he said in a low tone, "I found an unauthorized device connected to the vehicle's electronic system. I strongly recommend we do not use this car." A heavy silence fell upon the group. Wong took a step back, while Caesar discreetly reached inside his jacket. "Beatrice," Roderick addressed the girl in a calm voice, "could you tell me exactly what you heard them say?" The little girl nodded, glancing sideways at the two men before speaking. "They said, when the old man starts the car, the device will trigger. They'll blame environmentalists or the residents of Hopewell Village. No one will suspect us." She paused. "Then they said something about someone named Preston waiting for confirmation." Upon hearing the name, Roderick felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. Edward Preston was his financial director and a board member, one of the few who knew the full details of the Chinese negotiation. At that moment, Wong made a sudden move towards the girl, but was quickly intercepted by Randall, who, despite his limp, positioned himself between them. "Don't come closer," the head of security ordered. while Paul and Anthony immediately surrounded Roderick and the child. Caesar pulled out a gun, pointing it at Randall. "Step back." "This is a misunderstanding." The scene froze. Passers-by on the sidewalk began to realize something was wrong. Some pulling out there, cell phones to film, others quickly moving away. "They're armed," Bea whispered, gripping Roderick's hand tightly. "The other man is telling him to shoot the white-haired gentleman." Randall, realizing the escalation of the situation, acted with decades of experience. With a precise swing of his cane, he disarmed Caesar, while Paul subdued Wong. In seconds, the two traitorous security guards were immobilized on the ground. "Anthony, call the police," Roderick ordered, still holding the girl's hand, "and locate her grandmother immediately." As if invoked by his words, an elderly woman with grey hair and an elegant posture crossed the street with hurried steps. Constance Maxwell had the same determined look as her granddaughter. "Beatrice," she called, approaching. Seeing the scene, two men subdued on the ground, the police arriving, her granddaughter hand in hand with the powerful businessman, she paused momentarily, assessing the situation before continuing. "Grandma," the girl exclaimed, running into her grandmother's arms. "I told the man in the suit what they said in Mandarin, just like you taught me." Constance hugged her granddaughter, but her eyes remained fixed on Roderick Albright. There was a mixture of relief and defiance in them. "Professor Constance Maxwell," she finally said, extending her hand to the businessman, "it seems my granddaughter prevented something terrible today." Roderick shook the woman's hand, recognizing in her the same strength he had seen in the girl. "Your teaching saved my life, madam. I am eternally grateful." At that moment, another car pulled up sharply. Marina Albright, 32, hurried out, her heels clicking firmly against the asphalt. "Dad, what's going on?" she asked, quickly assessing the chaotic scene. A brilliant lawyer, Marina had inherited her father's shrewdness, but had a sense of justice that often put them on opposite sides. "An attempted assassination," Roderick replied dryly. "And from the looks of it, Edward Preston is involved." Marina paled. "Edward was her godfather and mentor when she started at the company." "Impossible," she murmured. As the police arrived and took control of the situation, Roderick made a decision. Turning to Constance and Beatrice, he spoke with determination. "You two are in danger. Whoever is behind this won't stop here. I need you to come with me to a safe place until we understand exactly what's happening." Constance hesitated. "I appreciate your concern, Mr. Albright, but we have our lives, our commitments. Beatrice has school, I have my students in the community." "Grandma," Bea interrupted, "he's right. I heard them saying they had our address. That's why I decided to disobey you and came to warn him." Constance's eyes widened, surprised by the information. Roderick realized the girl had initially omitted this detail. "I have a country house in Aspen, Colorado," he offered. "Secure, isolated, and with a trusted team. You'll stay there while I sort this out." "Marina," he turned to his daughter, "could you accompany them?" "I don't trust anyone else right now." Marina nodded, still processing the events. "And you, Dad?" "I'm going straight to the company. I need to understand who else is involved before they destroy evidence." His tone was icy. "Randall will stay with me." As the police took Wong and Caesar away, a news car parked nearby. News of an incident involving the famous businessman Roderick Albright was already spreading. "Let's go through the back," Anthony suggested, guiding the group away from the flashes and questions. On the way to the underground parking lot, Roderick observed Beatrice and her grandmother. There was something familiar about the woman's posture, her silent dignity. Suddenly, a distant memory emerged in his mind. "Professor Maxwell. Have we met before?" Constance smiled slightly. "You have a good memory, Roderick. It was almost 30 years ago. I was your wife Eliza's professor at the Faculty of Letters." The name hit Roderick like a wave. Eliza had been his first love, his first marriage, the only one who hadn't married for interest or convenience. They had separated when he was beginning to build his empire, when work consumed his nights and ambition shaped his decisions. "Eliza," he murmured, suddenly transported to another time. "How is she?" "She passed away 10 years ago," Constance replied softly. "Cancer. Beatrice is the daughter of our Rose, who works at the cafe in your building." Another shock. Rose, the kind, smiling barista who made his coffee every morning, was Eliza's daughter. Which meant Beatrice was... "My granddaughter is your granddaughter too, Roderick," Constance completed, confirming his thoughts. Eliza found out she was pregnant after the separation. She decided not to tell you, seeing the man you were becoming. Time seemed to freeze again. Marina looked at her father in astonishment, then at the girl, noticing for the first time the similarity in their eyes, in the shape of their faces. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Roderick asked, his voice trembling. "I tried when Rose started working at the cafe. I sent messages, letters. Your assistants never allowed me to reach you." Constance paused, and then Rose asked us to give up. She built her life, raised Beatrice with love. We didn't need your money or recognition. A long silence settled, broken only by the distant sound of sirens. Finally, it was Beatrice who spoke, with the disconcerting sincerity of children. "Mummy keeps your picture in her drawer. She cries sometimes looking at it." Roderick felt his heart ache. How many lives had he touched without realizing it? How many stories passed him by daily, invisible from his pedestal of power? In the parking lot, 2 cars awaited them. Marina took the wheel of one, taking Constance and Beatrice. Before getting into the other vehicle with Randall, Roderick approached the girl. "Thank you, Beatrice. You didn't just save my life today." The little girl smiled. "You're welcome, Grandpa." The word hit Roderick with unexpected force. Tears welled in his eyes, but he held them back, waving as the cars separated. On the way to the construction company, his cell phone rang. It was an unknown number. Albright. "Roderick." The voice was familiar but not immediately recognizable. "This is Charles Mason. We need to talk urgently. I know who's behind today's attempt, and it's much bigger than you imagine." Charles Mason, his former partner, sidelined 15 years ago after a dispute over company control. The man who knew all the skeletons in Albright Construction's closet. "Where can we meet?" Roderick asked, feeling he was about to dive into even deeper and more dangerous waters. Meanwhile, on the 38th floor of the building, Gustav Barnes received news of the operation's failure. His face remained impassive as he hung up the phone. "It seems we underestimated our president," he commented to Edward Preston, who was pacing nervously around the room. "And we also didn't count on a child who speaks Mandarin." "What do we do now?" Edward asked, visibly shaken. Gustav smiled coldly. "We activate Plan B, obviously. Albright thinks he's discovered the conspiracy, but he barely scratched the surface." In the next room, Clarice Vance, Edward's secretary for 20 years, heard everything through the intercom she had forgotten to turn off. Silently, she recorded the conversation on her cell phone, tears streaming down her face. The moment she had both dreaded and awaited had arrived, when she would have to definitively choose a side. The country house in Aspen, Colorado, was an oasis of tranquility amidst the chaos that had settled in the last few hours. Marina guided Constance and Beatrice through the spacious living room, with its panoramic windows overlooking the lush green mountains. "You'll be safe here," she explained, activating the electronic security system. "The property has 24-hour surveillance, and only authorized personnel can enter." Beatrice explored the space with curious eyes, running to the balcony to observe the pool and the immense garden. "It's like in the soap operas," she exclaimed, making Marina smile for the first time that day. Constance, on the other hand, maintained a serious demeanor, evaluating every detail with a critical eye. "Your father always liked to display power through possessions," she commented. "Some things never change." Marina sighed, preparing tea in the gourmet kitchen. "You don't like him very much, do you?" "It's not a matter of liking or disliking," Constance replied, accepting the offered cup. "It's a matter of principle. Roderick chose a path that left many victims along the way." "Like Hopewell Village?" Marina asked directly. Constance raised an eyebrow, surprised. "So you know." "I'm the company's legal director, Professor. I know everything that happens, even when I disagree." Marina sat across from the elderly woman. "I tried to convince my father to offer fair compensation to the residents, but the board blocked my proposals." "The board?" Constance leaned forward, interested. "The same ones who tried to eliminate your father today?" Marina nodded. "Gustav Barnes leads the more aggressive faction. He argues that the company should focus exclusively on profit, without sentimentality, as he calls any social initiative." "Interesting," Constance murmured, connecting the dots mentally. Across the city, Roderick parked at the back of an old cafe in Chinatown, San Francisco. Charles Mason awaited him at a discreet table in the back, a cup of coffee cooling in front of him. At 61, he maintained the same imposing posture as when they were partners, though his hair was now completely white. "You still have a habit of arriving exactly on time," Charles observed, consulting his watch. Roderick sat down without ceremony. "Get straight to the point, Charles. We don't have time for reminiscences." Charles smiled melancholically. "Always direct, always in a hurry. It was that way of yours that separated us, remember? You wanted to build fast, grow fast, no matter the means. And you wanted to follow rules that would limit us," Roderick retorted. "Look at the company today." "I was right." "Were you really?" Charles discreetly indicated the headlines on his tablet. The thwarted attack was already news on all portals. "It seems your empire has cracks in its foundations, old friend." Roderick ignored the provocation. "What do you know about this?" Charles took a sip of coffee before replying. "It all started 6 months ago, when you closed the preliminary agreement with the Chinese group. Gustav and Edward began holding parallel meetings without your knowledge." "How do you know this?" "I have my contacts," Charles replied enigmatically. "The point is that they offered the Chinese group an alternative deal. If you were removed, they would guarantee even more favorable terms, including tax exemptions that you refused to negotiate because they were ethically questionable." Roderick felt his blood boil. "Traitors?" "There's more," Charles continued. "Remember Project Jacaranda? The one you shelved 3 years ago. Project Jacaranda had been an ambitious proposal to build a luxury resort in an environmental protection area. Roderick had cancelled it not out of ecological conscience, but because the legal risk was too high. What about it? Gustav resurrected it. He convinced the board that, with the right political connections and your absence, it would be possible to move forward. The potential return is billions. Roderick processed the information, realizing the extent of the conspiracy. "And Hopewell Village? How does that fit into all this?" Charles stared at him intensely. "That's where the story gets really interesting. The village isn't just an obstacle for your luxury condominium. It's also the only viable land access for Project Jacaranda." "My God," Roderick murmured, the pieces falling into place. "They needed me out of the way to execute both projects simultaneously." "Exactly. And there's one more thing you should know." Charles hesitated briefly. "It's about Constance Maxwell." Meanwhile, at the country house, Beatrice had fallen asleep in one of the guest rooms, exhausted by the day's events. Marina and Constance conversed on the balcony, watching the sun set behind the mountains. "Why did you never go to court?" Marina asked. "You could have demanded paternity recognition for Rose, secured her rights." Constance smiled sadly. "You think like a lawyer. I think like a mother and grandmother. What Rose needed wasn't money or a name. It was peace to raise her daughter. Your father was building his third marriage when she was born. With that socialite, what was her name again?" "Patricia Vance," Marina replied with a grimace. "It lasted less than 3 years. It was the worst period of my adolescence." "See? What kind of environment would that be for Rose and Beatrice?" Constance shook her head. "Besides, Eliza made me promise on her deathbed that I would protect Rose from Roderick's influence, unless he changed." Marina reflected on the woman's words. "And you think he's changed now?" "Time will tell," Constance replied enigmatically. "But seeing the way he looked at Beatrice today, it was the first time in decades that I recognized the young man my daughter fell in love with." Marina's cell phone rang, interrupting the conversation. It was Anthony, her father's assistant. "Marina, we have a problem," he said, his voice tense. "Your father has disappeared. He was supposed to meet Randall at the company 2 hours ago, but he never arrived. He's not answering his cell phone, and the car's tracker has been deactivated." Marina felt a chill run down her spine. "Have you checked the hospitals?" "All of them, no sign." "And there's more. Edward Preston was found unconscious in his office. Someone attacked him." "My God," Marina murmured. "What's going on?" "I don't know, but the board is calling an extraordinary meeting for tomorrow morning. Gustav Barnes is proposing that you temporarily assume the presidency due to your father's mental instability." Marina hung up, stunned. Constance watched her with concern. "Bad news?" "My father's gone, and it seems they're trying to use me to take control of the company." At the same moment, Constance's cell phone vibrated with a message. The woman quickly read the text, paling. It's from an unknown number, she said, showing the screen to Marina. The message was direct. Professor, this is Roderick. I'm fine, but I needed to disappear. Charles Mason revealed something crucial about your past. We need to talk in person. Tomorrow 7 a.m. at the Old Pier. Come alone. It's a matter of life or its absence. The Old Pier? Marina asked, confused. It's a place with meaning for us, Constance explained vaguely. It's where Eliza and Roderick met many years ago. Few people know that. It could be a trap, Marina warned. Whoever is behind this might be trying to lure you away from the safety of this house. Constance reflected for a moment. Perhaps. But if it really is Roderick, and if he discovered what I think he discovered, I need to go. What are you talking about? What could my father have discovered about you that's so important? Before Constance could answer, they heard a noise coming from the room where Beatrice was sleeping. They rushed there, finding the girl sitting in bed, eyes wide open. "Bea, what's wrong?" Constance asked, hugging her granddaughter. "I dreamed about the bad man," the little girl murmured. "He was in Mommy's house looking for something." Marina and Constance exchanged alarmed glances. "What bad man, dear?" Marina asked gently. "The man who was talking to the guards today, the one with glasses." "Gustav Barnes," Marina whispered, feeling a chill. "How could she know what he looks like?" "Beatrice has dream," Constance began hesitantly. "Dreams that sometimes come true. Eliza also had this gift." Marina looked at the woman incredulously. "Are you saying she's sensitive?" "Yes. It's a family trait from Eliza's side. That's how she knew she needed to warn Roderick today. It wasn't just because she heard the guards talking." In the silence that followed, Marina's cell phone vibrated again. It was a message from a police contact. "We found your father's car abandoned near Lake Tahoe. No signs of violence. But there was another vehicle nearby registered to Charles Mason. We need to act," Marina decided. "I'm going to activate my contacts in the federal police. Something much bigger is happening." Constance nodded, still hugging Beatrice. "And I will go to the meeting tomorrow. If Roderick is trying to piece this puzzle together, he needs to know the whole truth." "What truth?" Marina insisted. Constance sighed deeply. "About who is really behind Albright Construction. About the real reason Eliza distanced herself from Roderick. And about the project he never knew existed long before Jacaranda." "You're not making sense," Marina protested. "I will," Constance promised. "Tomorrow, when we meet your father, everything will become clear, including why they tried to eliminate him precisely now." Meanwhile, in an isolated cabin in the Lake Tahoe region, Roderick watched the night fall through a dusty window. Beside him, Charles Mason studied old documents scattered on a makeshift table. "How long do you think we have before they find us?" Roderick asked. "Not long," Charles replied grimly, "but enough for you to understand who has really been pulling the strings all these years." Roderick picked up a yellowed photograph. In it, a group of young businessmen smiled alongside influential politicians. It was the beginning of Albright Construction, more than 3 decades ago. Among the faces, he recognized his father, Charles himself, and Constance Maxwell. "This doesn't make sense," he murmured. "Eliza never mentioned that Constance was involved in the business." "Because she didn't know," Charles replied. "No one knew. Constance wasn't just a language professor, Roderick. She was our main informant in the Orient Scheme." "The Orient Scheme was shelved decades ago," Roderick protested. "It was just an expansion project for the Asian market that never got off the ground." Charles laughed bitterly. "That's what you always believed, isn't it? Because that's what your father and Gustav wanted you to believe. The truth, my friend, is much darker, and it perfectly explains why Constance kept Rose and Beatrice away from you all these years." Roderick felt a chill run down his spine as he realized he was about to uncover secrets that could destroy not only his empire, but the entire narrative of his life. Dawn was already breaking when Marina finally managed to get Beatrice to fall asleep again. The girl had remained agitated, describing in disturbing detail the man with glasses rummaging through the small apartment where she lived with her mother. "Do you really think she's having a real vision?" Marina asked Constance, as they both sat in the living room with cups of strong coffee. The elderly woman sighed deeply. "I'm sure. This gift has run in the family for generations. Eliza predicted her own passing 6 months before. That's how she managed to put everything in order to say goodbye properly." Marina observed the elderly woman with new eyes. There was much more to that retired professor than met the eye. You mentioned a project before Jacaranda, she recalled. What exactly is it? Constance hesitated, turning the cup between her wrinkled hands. It was called the Orient Scheme. It started even before you were born, when your grandfather still ran the construction company. My grandfather? Marina frowned. I thought he only built residential buildings in New York City. The perfect facade, Constance replied with a bitter smile. In truth, Anthony Albright was involved in something much bigger. He used the construction company to launder money from an international information trafficking scheme. Marina almost dropped her cup. That's absurd. Child, it's the truth. Your grandfather established connections with Chinese businessmen decades before globalization became common in the US. It wasn't for construction, but to serve as a bridge for strategic information. What kind of information? Constance lowered her voice as if the walls could hear. Technological, mainly. Your grandfather facilitated the illegal transfer of American technology abroad. Boeing projects, military research, even banking systems. The US was losing millions in intellectual property. And how do you know all this? Marina asked incredulously. Because I was a double agent. The confession dropped like a bomb in the silence of the room. I officially worked as a Mandarin professor, but in reality I was recruited by American intelligence to infiltrate the scheme. Marina stood up, pacing nervously around the room. You're telling me you were a spy? This sounds like a movie script. Reality often surpasses fiction, Constance replied calmly. I was trained in China in my youth. My parents were diplomats. When I returned to the US, the agency recruited me precisely for my fluency and contacts in the East. And my father? Was he involved in this? Constance shook her head. Not at first. Roderick was just an ambitious young man learning the business from his father. That's why I approached him, to gain access to the inner circle. Using Eliza? Marina asked, horrified. No. Constance seemed genuinely offended. I would never use my daughter. Their meeting was accidental, at the old pier during a festival. The love that blossomed was real. But you didn't stop it. I tried at first, Constance admitted, but I realized that Roderick could be our greatest hope of dismantling the scheme from within. He didn't know what his father was really doing. Marina processed the information, trying to fit this new reality into everything she knew about her family. What went wrong then? Why did Eliza and my father separate? Constance's face darkened. When Anthony Albright discovered I was an agent, he threatened Eliza. Roderick was traveling on business. We had to disappear quickly, fake the separation to protect her. My grandfather threatened Eliza. Marina felt her stomach churn. Not directly. He was too sophisticated for that. He made it sound like paternal advice. Roderick has a brilliant future ahead of him. Wouldn't it be sad if something interfered? The message was clear. And my father never knew. He believed Eliza had left him for another man. The story your grandfather fabricated. It was easier for the masculine ego to accept betrayal than to think the woman simply didn't want him anymore. Marina sat down again, stunned. And when my grandfather passed away, the scheme continued. Gustav Barnes took over the operation, with Edward Preston as his right-hand man. They kept Roderick focused on the legitimate part of the business, while continuing the parallel activities. And now? Now they've reactivated the scheme on a large scale, taking advantage of the partnership with the Chinese. The difference is that it's no longer just about technological information, but also international money laundering. Project Jacaranda is just the visible tip of the iceberg. At the same moment, miles away, Roderick analyzed old documents by the light of a flashlight. Charles had fallen asleep in a makeshift chair, while he continued his investigation late into the night. One folder in particular had caught his attention. It contained detailed records of transactions between Albright Construction and shell companies in Hong Kong, dated from when his father was still alive. In several handwritten notes, he recognized Gustav Barnes's handwriting, already his father's right-hand man at that time. A document caught his eye, an old photo where his father appeared alongside a severe-looking Chinese man. On the back, a note, Zhao and Anthony, Beijing, 1980. Zhao, Roderick murmured. The name was familiar somehow. Consulting other documents, he found the connection. Zhao Liwen was the grandfather of the current leader of the Chinese group, with whom he had recently closed the deal. The partnership was not new. It was the continuation of something started decades earlier. When the sun began to rise, Roderick had already connected the dots. His empire, which he believed he had built with his own effort, was partially sustained by a network of illicit activities that dated back to his father. Revolt and guilt mingled in his chest. "Woke up early," Charles commented, waking up to the rustle of papers. "Never slept," Roderick replied, rubbing his tired eyes. "Why didn't you tell me all this before, Charles? When we separated. I tried to warn you about your father's methods, remember? You said I was jealous, that I wanted to limit your growth." Roderick remembered. In his youthful arrogance, he had interpreted Charles's warnings as attempts to control him. And Constance? What does she really want? Charles helped himself to cold coffee from the thermos. "Justice, I imagine. She investigated your father for years. When the scheme was temporarily interrupted after Anthony's death, she thought it was over. Until Gustav resurrected it recently. And Eliza. Did she know? Not everything, but enough to fear for her life. When she found out she was pregnant with Rose, she decided to protect her daughter by distancing herself from me." Roderick completed, feeling a deep pain at the thought of the lost decades. The daughter he had never known, the granddaughter who had grown up without knowing who he was. "We need to go," Charles announced, consulting his watch. "The meeting at the pier is in an hour." "How do you know about the meeting?" "So, sir, because I was the one who suggested the location to Constance. She trusts me." Meanwhile, at Rose Maxwell's apartment in Queens, New York, Gustav Barnes finished ransacking the last room. Beside him, two intimidating-looking men awaited instructions. "Nothing," he finally said, frustrated. "She must have taken it with her." "What exactly are we looking for, sir?" asked one of the men. "A USB drive." Blue with a Chinese label, Gustav adjusted his glasses. "Constance Maxwell kept records of everything for decades. It's the only concrete evidence that can incriminate us. And the girl, the one who speaks Mandarin. Thoiser, she's just an inconvenient child. Our priority is to find Roderick and the USB drive. Mobilize all teams to the pier. I'm sure they'll show up there." At the country house, Marina was preparing to leave when her cell phone rang. It was Clarice Edward Preston's secretary. "Marina," the woman's voice was a hurried whisper. "Don't go to the pier. It's a trap. They know about the meeting and are preparing an ambush." "How do you—" "No time to explain. I have the recordings of the conversations between Gustav and Edward. They planned everything from the attack on your father to— Oh my God, they're coming." The call dropped abruptly. Marina tried to call back but only got voicemail. She rushed to tell Constance, finding the elderly woman already dressed, preparing to leave. "We can't go to the pier," Marina warned. "Gustav knows about the meeting." "And how will we warn your father?" Constance asked, worried. "I have an idea," Marina replied after a moment of reflection, "but we'll need Beatrice's help." The girl, who was in the kitchen having breakfast, looked up curiously. "Bea," Marina began gently, "can you see where my father is now?" "In your special dreams?" Constance intervened. "Marina, we can't ask her to do that. Using the gift that way is dangerous and unpredictable." "Do we have a choice?" Marina retorted. "If we can't warn my father, he'll walk straight into a trap." Beatrice put down her chocolate cup, looking seriously at the two women. "I can try," she said simply, "but I need something that belongs to him, something personal." Marina thought quickly. "In his office here, there's a pen he always uses." "Would that work?" Beatrice nodded. Minutes later, sitting in Roderick's office armchair with the pen between her small fingers, the girl closed her eyes. Marina and Constance watched, tense. "I see water," Beatrice murmured after a few minutes. "Lots of water. And a black car. He's with another man." "With white hair?" "Charles," Constance whispered. "They're going to the pier now," the girl continued, her face contorted in concentration. "But there are people waiting, men hidden, with things in their hands." "Guns," Marina translated, paling. Beatrice opened her eyes suddenly, startled. "The man with glasses is there. He's going to hurt Grandpa." Constance hugged her granddaughter, while Marina frantically typed on her cell phone. "What are you doing?" Constance asked. "Alerting the only people we can still trust," Marina replied. "And I think I know how we can turn the tables on Gustav." At the same moment, Roderick's cell phone vibrated in the pocket of his crumpled jacket. A message from an unknown number appeared on the screen. Dad, do not go to the pier. Trap. Gustav knows. Meet us at the place where you used to take me to see the boats when I was 7. Beatrice saw the danger. Come with Charles. Trust me. Roderick looked at Charles, who was driving, concentrating on the road wet from the light rain. Change of plans, he announced, showing the message. We need to shake off whoever is following us. Charles nodded, making a sharp turn at the next exit. Where are we going? Fisherman's Wharf, Roderick replied, feeling a strange emotion as he remembered the Sundays he took little Marina to see the boats, at a time when he could still carve out a few hours from his busy week to simply be a father. Interesting choice, Charles commented. No one would associate you with that simple place nowadays. Roderick looked out the window, observing the city beginning to wake up. Somewhere between those buildings and avenues, his unknown daughter, Rose, was probably preparing for another day of work at the cafe, unaware that her world was about to change forever. What will we do when all this is over? He asked, more to himself than to Charles. If we survive, you mean? Charles smiled ironically. Perhaps it's time to finally make the right choices, Roderick. For Eliza, for your daughters, for your granddaughter. At the marina, the small boat was already waiting for them. Marina had thought of everything. Fisherman's Wharf maintained the same simplicity it had decades ago. Small boats swayed gently with the movement of the water, while fishermen prepared their nets for the day's work. The smell of sea salt and fresh fish filled the cloudy morning air. Marina waited in a small wooden boat, painted faded blue. Constance and Beatrice remained hidden in the cabin. Spotting Charles's car parking discreetly, Marina felt a tightening in her chest. Years of emotional distance from her father had created a barrier that now seemed absurd given the gravity of the situation. Roderick saw his daughter and quickened his pace, with Charles close behind. Both looked exhausted, with crumpled clothes and tense expressions. "Did you come alone?" Marina asked in a low voice as they approached. Roderick nodded. "We changed cars twice on the way. I'm sure we shook off any pursuers. For now," Charles added, constantly looking around, "don't underestimate Gustav. He has eyes everywhere." Marina indicated the boat. "Get in. We'll talk on the move." Once aboard and away from the shore, Constance and Beatrice emerged from the cabin. The meeting between Roderick and his granddaughter was charged with contained emotion, the girl spontaneously running to hug him, while the businessman seemed unsure how to react to such a display of affection. "Are you okay, Grandpa?" Beatrice asked, examining him with serious eyes. "I saw men wanting to hurt you." Roderick looked at Constance, seeking an explanation. "Beatrice has the gift," the elderly woman explained simply. Like Eliza had. Roderick nodded, understanding. He had witnessed moments when Eliza seemed to know things she couldn't possibly have known, an ability he, at the time, attributed to keen feminine intuition. "I'm fine, thanks to you." "Little one," he finally replied, stroking the girl's hair. "For the second time, you saved me." With Marina at the helm of the boat, they sailed slowly across the lake, moving further and further from the shore. The isolation of the waters offered the privacy and security they needed. "We need to share what we've discovered," Roderick began, facing Constance. "I know about the Orient scheme. I know you were an agent, and I know my father threatened Eliza." Constance showed no surprise. "Charles has always been meticulous in his records," she commented, looking at her old friend. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Roderick asked, a note of hurt in his voice. "About Rose, about Beatrice. I had a right to know." "Did you really?" Constance retorted, without hostility but with firmness. "The man you became after Eliza's departure was not someone I would entrust my girls to. You chose your father's legacy, Roderick. You chose the empire over people." The words hit Roderick like a physical blow. He looked away, unable to deny the truth in them. "What matters now is stopping Gustav," Marina intervened, sensing the weight of that conversation. "Do we have enough evidence to bring him to justice?" Charles sighed. "Circumstantial evidence, mostly. Old documents that suggest but don't directly prove. Gustav has always been careful." "I have proof," Constance announced, drawing all eyes. "For decades I have been documenting every move, every transaction. I have names, dates, values, connections." "The blue USB drive," Roderick murmured, remembering the information he had found in the documents. Constance smiled slightly. "So Gustav is still looking for it?" She removed a small crucifix she wore around her neck. With skill, she opened a secret compartment, revealing a tiny device. Modern technology in traditional disguise. That explains why he broke into Rose's apartment, Marina commented. Rose? Roderick exclaimed, suddenly alarmed. Is she safe? Yes, Constance reassured him. Before all this started, I had already sent Rose to stay with my sister in Nantucket. I had a premonition that something was about to happen when I saw the new Chinese investors in the newspaper. Beatrice, who had been watching the conversation with unusual attention for a child her age, suddenly became alert. They're coming, she announced, looking at the horizon. Everyone followed her gaze. At first they saw nothing but the morning mist over the water. Then the sound of a powerful engine broke the silence. A fast speedboat was approaching. Gustav, Marina whispered, recognizing the man's profile at the bow. How did they find us? Roderick asked, tense. The boat, Charles replied, pointing to a small, almost invisible device under one of the seats. Tracker. Marina accelerated the engine, but the simple vessel had no chance against the modern, fast speedboat that was pursuing them. There's no point in running, Constance declared with surprising calm. In fact, this is exactly what I expected. Everyone looked at her, confused. For years I've been waiting for the opportunity to confront Gustav openly, she explained. Today we will finally have that reckoning. It's too dangerous, Roderick protested. He didn't come alone and he won't hesitate to use force. Constance smiled enigmatically. Neither will we. At that moment, Marina's cell phone rang. It was a simple text message. Position secured. Awaiting signal. Perfect, the lawyer murmured. Turning to the others, she explained, I have some friends in the federal police. I activated them as soon as I learned of the trap at the pier. They are strategically positioned around the lake, just waiting for Gustav to show his true intentions. Roderick looked at his daughter with admiration. You set up a counter-ambush. I learned from the best, Marina replied with a slight smile. But we need to make him reveal his intentions clearly. Unquestionable evidence. The speedboat approached, slowing down. In addition to Gustav, there were 3 other men on board, including Wong, the security guard who had been arrested and apparently released. Roderick, my dear friend, Gustav called out with false cordiality. What a coincidence to find you here. We were all worried about your sudden disappearance. Spare us the act, Gustav, Roderick replied coldly. We know everything. The Orient scheme, the partnership with the Jaos, the attempt to eliminate me. Gustav's smile wavered momentarily, but he quickly recomposed himself. I don't know what you're talking about. I just came to offer help. His eyes swept over the small boat, stopping at Constance. Professor Maxwell. Long time no see. Still keeping secrets from others, I see. Only my own, Gustav, Constance replied serenely. Unlike you, who always preferred to hide behind others. Gustav's mask of cordiality began to fall. Hand over the device, Constance. No one needs to get hurt here. Are you referring to this? She showed the small USB drive. 30 years of evidence about your illicit activities, enough to keep you in prison for the rest of your life. Gustav signaled to his men, who drew weapons. Last chance, he warned. The device, or I'll have to take drastic measures. Beatrice, who was watching everything with wide eyes, clung to Roderick. He's not alone, she whispered. More people are coming. Indeed, 2 smaller vessels appeared on the horizon, approaching rapidly. Enough games, Gustav declared, his true nature finally revealed. You won't leave this lake with that device. The Orient scheme is bigger than you all imagine. It's not just a corruption scheme. It's an international strategic operation. Governments depend on it. Fortunes are built upon it. And people are destroyed by it, Constance completed. Like Eliza almost was. Gustav laughed bitterly. Eliza was a sentimental fool like you. Anthony was right to keep her away from Roderick. She would have ruined everything with her scruples. So you admit my father threatened Eliza? Roderick pressed. Your father did what was necessary to protect the legacy you now enjoy, Gustav retorted. The difference is that he had the courage to get his hands dirty, while you always preferred to pretend your empire was built only with honest work. Marina, discreetly, activated the recording on her cell phone. Every word of Gustav's was being recorded. And Hopewell Village? She asked. Is it also necessary to destroy the lives of those families? Collateral damage, Gustav replied coldly. Project Jacaranda will generate billions. A few hundred poor families are a small price to pay. Is that why you tried to eliminate me? Roderick asked. Because I blocked the project 3 years ago. In part. Gustav adjusted his glasses meticulously, but mainly because we discovered you were investigating old company transactions. Edward noticed your access to the dead file system. You were getting too close to the truth. And with your recent obsession with social responsibility, he made air quotes with his fingers, we feared you might decide to clear the company's name, exposing everything. The support vessels approached, surrounding the small boat. Armed men pointed at the group. Now the device, Gustav demanded, extending his hand. It was at that moment that Beatrice, surprising everyone, stepped forward. You won't hurt my family, she declared with a disconcerting firmness for her 7 years. Gustav laughed. And what does a child think she can do to stop me? Beatrice smiled mysteriously. I already did. While you were talking, Aunt Marina's friends arrived. As if responding to the girl's words, the sound of helicopter blades cut through the air. 2 federal police helicopters appeared over the lake, while several police boats emerged from the mist, surrounding the group. Federal police, an amplified voice announced. Drop your weapons. You are all under arrest. Gustav's face contorted into a mask of fury. In a desperate move, he leaped onto Roderick's boat, grabbing Beatrice as a shield. Nobody moves, he screamed, pressing a gun against the child. I'm getting out of here, and she's coming with me as collateral. Time seemed to freeze. Roderick, Marina, and Constance were paralyzed, while Charles slowly positioned himself, looking for an angle of attack. Surprisingly, Beatrice remained calm. Her eyes met Roderick's, conveying an inexplicable serenity. Don't be afraid, Grandpa, she said softly. Grandma Eliza is here. The words, seemingly nonsensical, made Gustav hesitate for a crucial second, enough time for Charles, with an agility that contradicted his age, to knock the gun away with a precise blow of his cane. At the same instant, federal agents stormed the boat, subduing Gustav, who screamed incoherent threats and accusations as he was handcuffed. Roderick hugged Beatrice protectively, while Marina helped Constance sit down. The elderly woman suddenly seemed exhausted, as if a decades-long weight had finally been lifted from her shoulders. It's over, she murmured, tears in her eyes. It's finally over, Eliza. As the helicopters hovered over the lake and federal agents took control of the situation, Roderick contemplated his makeshift family. The daughter he knew and with whom he had never achieved true closeness, the granddaughter he had just discovered, and the woman who had kept secrets to protect them all. For the first time in decades, he felt that perhaps there was a chance for redemption for him. What happens now? He asked Constance, as the adrenaline began to subside. The elderly woman looked at the horizon, where the sun finally broke through the mist, illuminating the waters of the lake. Now, she replied with a serene smile, we finally begin to live, Roderick. Without secrets, without lies, without the weight of the past. But as life rarely offers perfect resolutions, Constance's gaze caught a disturbing detail on the distant dock, a figure observing everything with binoculars. Even at a distance, she recognized the profile, Zhao Limin, the leader of the Chinese conglomerate and grandson of the man who had started it all decades ago. The battle may have been won, but the war was far from over. 3 months had passed since the dramatic events on the lake. Roderick Albright's office at Albright Construction, once cold and impersonal, now displayed family photos in simple frames. One in particular held a prominent position. Roderick, Marina, Rose, Beatrice, and Constance, all smiling at a Sunday lunch at the country house in Aspen, Colorado. The businessman was contemplating the photo when Marina entered, carrying a pile of documents. The latest audit reports, she announced, placing them on the mahogany table. We finally have a complete mapping of the damages. Roderick sighed. The company cleanup was painful but necessary. After the arrest of Gustav and his accomplices, they initiated a complete and independent audit of all Albright construction operations. The revelations had been worse than imagined. Decades of systemic corruption, money laundering, and information trafficking disguised by legitimate operations. How long do you think it will take for us to rebuild everything? He asked, flipping through the documents. Marina sat across from him. Years, probably. But the good news is that the legitimate projects can continue. Justice only blocked the suspicious operations. The federal police, based on the evidence provided by Constance and the testimonies of those involved, had opened the largest corporate corruption investigation in the country's recent history. The Albright case, as the media had dubbed it, promised to reveal connections between businessmen, politicians, and international operators that spanned decades. And Hopewell Village. Marina smiled. The new project is ready for presentation. Constance and the community leaders have approved the concept. Instead of removing families to build luxury condominiums, the construction company was now working on an urbanization plan that would keep the community in place, with infrastructure improvements and land ownership for the residents. A cultural and educational center, named after Eliza Maxwell, would be built in the heart of the village. I never imagined I would change so much in so little time, Roderick confessed, leaning back in his chair. For the better, I hope, Marina commented. No doubt, he smiled slightly, although my old club friends think I've gone mad. Roderick Albright reducing profits to invest in social projects. The world is ending, Marina laughed. Wait until they see the technology training project for underprivileged youth that we're developing with Rose Maxwell, whom Roderick had finally met after the events on the lake, had revealed herself not only as his biological daughter, but as a brilliant and determined woman who, despite financial difficulties, had graduated in computer science and dreamed of creating opportunities for young people from disadvantaged communities. The intercom chimed. It was Anthony, his faithful assistant. Mr. Albright, Miss Constance and Beatrice have arrived. Send them in, Roderick replied, standing up. Constance entered, leaning on an elegant wooden cane. At 67, she maintained her dignified posture and keen gaze, but the months of tension had taken their toll. Beside her, Beatrice, in her school uniform, carried a colorful folder. "Grandpa!" the girl exclaimed, running to hug Roderick. He was still surprised by the naturalness with which the child had accepted him into her life. "How was school today?" he asked, kissing the top of her head. "Great! I got an A on my science project. It was about China." Roderick and Constance exchanged glances. Beatrice's connection to the Asian country, strengthened by her special gift and her grandmother's teaching, remained strong. "Marina," Constance greeted the lawyer with a kiss on the cheek. "How is the process going?" "Advancing," Marina replied. Edward Preston's testimony was accepted as a plea deal. "He's revealing all the international contacts." Constance nodded, satisfied. "And the Zhaos?" A slight discomfort swept through the room. The Zhao family, whose connections to the operation dated back to the beginning of the Orient scheme, had so far managed to remain formally distant from the investigations. With operations in multiple countries and political protection in various jurisdictions, they were formidable adversaries. "Still trying to find concrete evidence against them," Marina admitted. "But the net is closing, especially after the interception of that shipment in Los Angeles port. 2 weeks earlier, the federal police had seized a container, supposedly containing construction materials for Albright Construction, but which in reality transported high-tech surveillance equipment originating from China. It was the first material evidence that the operation continued, even after Gustav's arrest. "Zhao Limin will not give up easily," Constance commented. "He sees this as a family legacy, just as his grandfather did." Beatrice, who was playing with a globe in the corner of the room, suddenly turned around. "He's going to try one last time," she announced with the disconcerting naturalness of her premonitions. "In 2 weeks." At the foundation event, the adults exchanged tense glances. The Eliza Maxwell Foundation, created by Roderick to centralize the company's social projects, was scheduled for its official launch in exactly 2 weeks, with a large charity event that would attract businessmen, politicians, and celebrities. "How do you know, dear?" Constance asked gently. "I dreamed." He was there, the Chinese man, watching everyone. Waiting for something, Roderick knelt to his granddaughter's level. "Did you see anything else in the dream? Something that could help us?" Beatrice frowned, trying to remember. He had a black briefcase, and he kept looking at his watch. "So, and there was someone with him who spoke English without an accent. An American," Marina concluded. "A new accomplice. Or someone who was already involved before and we haven't discovered," Roderick added. Constance watched Beatrice with maternal concern. "We shouldn't overload her with this. She's just a child." A special child, Roderick replied softly, who has already saved my life twice. Marina's phone rang, interrupting the conversation. Her face grew serious as she listened. I understand. Yes, I'll inform them. Thank you. Hanging up, she looked at the others with a grave expression. It was my contact at the federal police. Charles Mason has just been admitted to Mount Sinai Hospital. Apparent heart attack. Heart attack! Roderick repeated, incredulous. He had a full battery of tests 3 weeks ago. He was perfectly healthy. Exactly, Marina replied. The police suspect poisoning. He was preparing to testify about the scheme's international connections. That's how they work, Constance explained darkly. They eliminate witnesses without leaving a trace. Made it look like natural accidents. Beatrice approached her great-grandmother, holding her hand. Don't worry, Grandma. The white-haired man will be fine. How do you know, dear? Constance asked, surprised. Because he has a guardian angel just like mine, the girl replied simply. Grandma Eliza watches over him too. A reverent silence fell over the room. In recent weeks, everyone had learned not to question Beatrice's perceptions, however inexplicable they seemed. What do we do now? Marina finally asked. Roderick stood up, a new determination in his gaze. Exactly what we planned, but with extra precautions. The Foundation launch will happen as scheduled. It will be our trap. Are you proposing to use the event as bait? Constance questioned, concerned. I'm proposing to finish what we started, Roderick replied firmly. The Orient scheme almost destroyed our family once. I will not allow it to threaten the new family we are building. Over the next 2 weeks, a meticulous plan was developed. Event security was reinforced with disguised federal agents. Every guest would be rigorously checked, and special protocols were established for any participant of Chinese origin. Charles Mason, surprising doctors, recovered quickly. Analyses confirmed the presence of a rare toxin, but early treatment had prevented permanent damage. From his hospital room, he coordinated with the federal police the surveillance strategy on the Zhao family. On the eve of the big event, Roderick met with Rose for the first time without Constance or Marina present. In the elegant restaurant of the Plaza Hotel, father and daughter sought to build a relationship that had been denied to both for decades. Beatrice is excited about her new dress, Rose commented, a 30-year-old woman with Eliza's same penetrating eyes. She's never had anything so elegant. I hope it's not too much, Roderick replied, still unsure how to act as both father and grandfather simultaneously. I don't want it to seem like I'm trying to buy you with gifts. Rose smiled gently. That's not how we see it, Dad. We know you're trying to make up for lost time, and it's okay. We have time now. The word Dad still sounded strange between them, but less and less forced. I'm scared, Roderick confessed after a moment. Not about the event tomorrow or the joust. I'm scared of failing you again. Rose extended her hand, touching his across the table. Do you know the greatest lesson Mom taught me? That people can change. She never spoke ill of you, even after everything. She just said you had made different choices than hers. Roderick felt his eyes well up. Eliza was always better than I deserved. Perhaps, but she also believed that one day you would find your way back. That's why we never moved from New York City, even when it would have been easier. She wanted us to be within your reach, for when that day came. A comfortable silence settled between them, filled only by the soft sounds of the restaurant and the breathtaking view of the illuminated city. What will life be like after all this is over? Rose finally asked. After the Jousts are arrested and the scheme completely dismantled? Roderick reflected for a moment. I think I can finally be who I should have been from the beginning. A father, a grandfather, a businessman who builds more than just buildings. The next morning, the grand ballroom of the Waldorf Astoria was stunning. Arrangements of jacaranda, the flower that gave its name to the now reformed controversial project, decorated the space. Photographs of Eliza Maxwell and the social projects already initiated in the communities filled the display panels. Marina, elegant in a navy blue suit, personally supervised security. Every guest passed through metal detectors disguised as decorative archways. Federal agents circulated as waiters and receptionists. Beatrice, radiant in her emerald green dress, remained close to Constance, who observed everything with the serenity of someone finally seeing the conclusion of a life's mission. Rose, who had officially assumed the directorship of technology and social projects for the construction company, conversed animatedly with potential partners, her intelligence and charisma attracting attention and respect. And Roderick, at the center of it all, seemed a transformed man. The ruthless businessman had given way to a more thoughtful leader who spoke with genuine enthusiasm about plans to transform the construction company into an agent of positive social change. It was Beatrice who first noticed Zhao Limin's arrival. The Chinese businessman, impeccable in his Armani suit, entered accompanied by an elegant American woman whom Roderick immediately recognized, Patricia Vance, his third ex-wife. Interesting. Choice of escort, Marina murmured, positioning herself beside her father. Roderick nodded. I always suspected she maintained contacts in China after our divorce. Now we know with whom. The plan was in motion. As agreed, Roderick approached to greet the newcomers with studied cordiality. Zhao, what a pleasant surprise, he greeted, extending his hand. I didn't expect to see you after the recent events. The Chinese businessman smiled diplomatically. Business continues, Roderick, despite the small turbulences. By the way, this is Patricia. Of course I remember, Roderick interrupted. Long time no see, my dear. I see your international connections have prospered since our time together. A slight blush colored the woman's cheeks, but she maintained her composure. I've always been a talented networker, you know. Mr. Zhao and I have common business interests. I imagine so, Roderick replied. Well, please enjoy the event. I'll be giving my speech in about half an hour. Stepping away, he discreetly waved to one of the waiters, who immediately began to follow the couple at a distance. The event proceeded as planned. When it was time for Roderick's speech, all eyes turned to the makeshift stage. It was at that instant that Beatrice, sitting next to Constance in the front row, had one of her visions. Now, she whispered, pulling her great-grandmother's sleeve. He's doing something now. Constance immediately gave the prearranged signal to Marina, who alerted the agents. At the back of the ballroom, Zhao discreetly passed an envelope to another man, a hotel employee not on the official service list. In a matter of seconds, federal agents intercepted the transaction. The envelope contained confidential documents about upcoming testimonies in the Albright case, information that could only have come from someone with privileged access to the process. Simultaneously, Patricia tried to discreetly leave the event, but was blocked by Rose, who pretended to accidentally bump into her. In a hurry, stepmother? She asked with false sweetness. Before Patricia could reply, agents surrounded her. The briefcase she carried contained a sophisticated electronic device designed to hack the Foundation's security system. On stage, oblivious to the ongoing operation, Roderick began his speech. Today, we celebrate not just the launch of a foundation. We celebrate a second chance. For me, for my family, for the communities I have long ignored. Eliza Maxwell's name in this foundation is not just a tribute to my daughter's mother, but a commitment to her values of honesty and social justice that I long forgot. As he spoke, Zhao and his accomplices were discreetly removed from the ballroom. Patricia, visibly shaken, cooperated with the agents, already negotiating a possible plea deal. The true legacy is not buildings or fortunes, Roderick continued emotional. It is the lives we touch, the families we help build, the communities we strengthen. This is the new purpose of Albright construction. At the end of the speech, to enthusiastic applause, Roderick invited Marina, Rose, Constance, and Beatrice to join him on stage. The image of the reunited family, 3 generations united after decades of separation, was powerful. Later that night, as the last guests departed, the family gathered in the hotel garden. Charles Mason, in his first public appearance since his hospitalization, joined them with the aid of a cane. The Zhaos are detained, Marina informed, hanging up her cell phone after receiving the update from the federal police. And Patricia is already collaborating, implicating diplomats and businessmen in 3 countries. Is it over? Rose asked, her arm protectively around Beatrice's shoulders. Constance smiled, the wisdom of decades in her tired eyes. It never completely ends, but the biggest battle, yes. The Orient scheme has finally met its twilight. Beatrice, sleepy but happy, looked up at the starry sky. Grandma Eliza is smiling. She says she can rest now. Roderick felt a shiver run down his spine, but not of fear. It was a feeling of closure, of cycles completed and new ones beginning. "What do we do now?" he asked, looking at his rebuilt family. "We live," Constance replied simply. Day by day, building something better than what came before. Charles raised his glass in a silent toast, and everyone imitated him. In the silence of that moment, under the New York City stars, an unspoken promise was sealed, of truth, redemption, and a new beginning. And it all began with the courageous whisper of a little girl who refused to stay silent in the face of evil. End of story. Dear listeners, we hope Roderick and Beatrice's story has touched your hearts. To continue this exciting journey, we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating stories. Find it here by clicking to your left. If you enjoyed this narrative, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. Every day we bring unique stories that explore the complexity of American life and the bonds that unite us. Don't miss our upcoming content. We await your comments on what you liked most in this story of The Whisper That Saved.